Hello, and welcome to the Market Bull podcast. Please note, topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial or investment advice. Today on the show, I spoke with Mike Spreadborough, the executive co-chairman of Novo Resources, which is listed on the TSX, OTC, and listing soon on the ASX in Q3. Novo Resources is focused primarily on its gold projects in Western Australia and Victoria. Mike talked about his extensive background in the mining sector and his journey to Novo Resources. Mike spoke about the dual listing process and why mining giant De Grey Mining entered into a joint venture with the company in June this year. Mike talked about the key projects of the company, highlighting the Becher, which is the focus of the joint venture with De Grey Mining. He also talked about the plans for the company, the key timelines with the projects, and who was a part of the team. I hope you enjoy listening. So hello, I'm Ben Kostrich, and this is the Market Bull podcast. Joining me on the show today is Mike Spreadborough, the executive co-chairman of Novo Resources. It's already listed on 2 exchanges, and the purpose of this conversation today is to learn about the upcoming third. So before we go into Novo Resources, welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, Ben. Good to catch up.
So diving into Novo Resources, you're going through the process now of doing a dual listing on the ASX, which is, I can imagine, extremely exciting and a lot of work going into it and the reasons, but we'll explore all that in a moment. So yourself, I noticed on your resume, you've worked for countless mining companies and been in the industry for countless years as well. But your whole story and insight, I mean, how have you progressed throughout your career in the mining sector?
Well, I think the first thing I should declare is I'm a Queenslander, so don't hold that hold that against me. Yeah, I always say you can take the boy out of Queensland, but not Queensland out of the boy. So actually a mine engineer by training, but I probably haven't done very much engineering for a long time. Somewhere along in my career, I ended up being the general manager of mining of Olympic Dam, so that's a very large, complex underground operation. So that was a huge achievement and great excitement. I kind of got a bit bored with rocks for a while and disappeared into Rio Tinto and ran all their port operations for 5 years. So that's something very different for a mine engineer. About that time in my career, I was really looking to get closer to the business end. So I moved into the smaller sector. So in that period, I've worked for Ivanhoe Australia and Robert Friedman's group. Sandfire took a bit of time and IPO'd a project in Indonesia called Nusantara. So that was something different. And for the last couple of years, I've really been working for companies that need to be restructured. And so I did a bit of work for Metals X, and here I am with Novo doing something similar. I enjoy building things. So I suppose early in my career as a mine engineer, you get to build mines, and then I've been in feasibility studies, I've run exploration programs, and I suppose now more in the corporate field, I'm building companies. But the key element in all of that is I love working with people and love seeing teams succeed. So that's the commonality.
Because I notice with a lot of executives in a position like yourself, you've started in at a different field and then naturally you've moved away from the big scale ones and gone further down to the smaller side of the sector to get more of a challenge, a bit more freedom potentially, with these big companies having a lot of structures and bureaucracy in place as well, but having a lot more creativity and freedom to really explore. So going into Novo Resources, explain what the company is and how it's been progressing. And of course, we'll address the exciting IPO dual listing on the ASX shortly. But yeah, what is Novo Resources?
Yeah, so Novo's been around a long time. I think many of your listeners have probably remembered Novo was part of a conglomerate story a few years ago and definitely had a larger market cap. So that really was triggered the growth of Novo. For a whole range of reasons, the conglomerate story hasn't progressed very well, but notwithstanding that, the team accumulated a fantastic exploration portfolio. You know, originally 18 months ago would have been about 14,000 square kilometres of tenure. So that's huge across the Pilbara and a little bit in Victoria. So whilst the conglomerates haven't worked, the exploration portfolio is now fantastic. So in the near term, we've been busy as an exploration company focused on the value within those assets. So we still want to really focus on being a gold explorer, but we have looked for lithium and nickel and other things across it. We've got a great team, but at the moment, you know, we're listed on the TSX. We really like exploring. We think explorers provide a really great upside for investors. You know, if you are successful, and we'll talk about some of the stuff we've done in a minute, but if you are successful, there's a great leverage for shareholders. We may not bring dividends, but we bring uplift in market cap.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's part of the attraction that we were saying before, the noise about De Grey Mining wanting to be involved, or is involved, I should say, with this company really highlights the potential of the areas and the tenements that you've got. So, I mean, talking before, you said there's been a lot of work building up these packages and having it ready. I mean, what has been involved in that, and what are some of the highlight projects at Novo?
Yeah, so with our exploration team, they've got a very disciplined process, and Novo is focused on how we maximise the benefit of the tenements we've got. Now, that doesn't mean we keep them. We had 14,000 square kilometres, we're down to 10,000 square kilometres, and probably at the end of the year we're even smaller. That just reflects that as our team goes through and does reconnaissance work, a little bit of drilling, we make a decision on toll gating it on going further. So people shouldn't be concerned that we've dropped tenements. It's about a fight for quality, and what are the tenements that we think have the potential to bring on new resource projects. We're ambitious in setting ourselves a target of looking for big projects. We want 1 million ounce type projects. We're not interested in a small 200, 300,000 ounce project that might be brownfields into an existing processing plant. There's not that many processing plants in the Pilbara anyway, but we're looking for the bigger projects that are really company earners, or we have an opportunity to do something with. So that's the rationale. Our exploration team do a lot of reconnaissance work, and then we'll move those projects into drilling and hopefully build a resource, and that will continue to be our disciplined approach.
And I think that's the key with a lot of exploration companies, at least on the smaller side, is you have to be very specific in what you explore further, because you can have a huge acreage of land, but then you've really got to narrow it down because, as we all know, limited resources. It's not like some of the big players. So you mentioned before the Pilbara. I want to dive more into that and about that project, because that's where the real, at least the attraction I'm seeing of reading all the news. So talk to us about the Pilbara project and the area you've got there.
Yeah, I think as people have seen, the Pilbara, when I grew up, and even as a young engineer, I worked at Parapadua, I've worked at Punnawonica, and I ran the port. So you always think of the Pilbara as iron ore, but the Pilbara does have a great historic presence of gold, and as we know now, in the northern part of the Pilbara, you see a lot of lithium. So across our tenements, we have seen nickel and copper and lithium, and where we do see those, we like to joint venture those or sell those tenements, because we think investors like a pure gold play. It doesn't get confusing for people. Gold's a little bit different as a commodity. It's a wealth commodity. It's very securing for economics. So we think gold, it's important to be a real gold play. So that's been our focus. So recently, with the work that we started, we pulled apart some areas south of De Grey's Mallina Basin, and that's our Becher Project. So we've only been drilling since September last year. June this year, we completed a really astonishing agreement with De Grey. It's great for our shareholders, but it shows the potential, not only what our exploration team could do, but shows the quality of Becher going forwards for shareholders in Novo. So that deal, whilst it brought $10 million of cash into Novo, which is really important for an explorer, I think the joint venture is really powerful. De Grey, and we like De Grey team, they've been on Mallina, great success, haven't they? Over 4.5 years, they've taken nothing into something, and we think Becher's got that potential, but it's hard for a junior to grow that. Well, De Grey can bring on experience. They've got some cash, so they've brought that on as well. So De Grey will spend $25 million over 4 years drilling Becher and the tenements around it, and that will still leave Novo with 50%. That figure is pretty important to me. I think it gives upside to Novo shareholders, and it gives us the flexibility to make a decision down the track. But I think it really shows De Grey likes what they see. They know the area better than anyone else. So I think it's been a great deal, and really is an accomplishment for our exploration team. Only 6 months of drilling of air core, and you've got a $2 billion market cap company like De Grey that's well on the development path of 12 million ounces, and they've invested in Novo, and that's their first joint venture. So that's also, I think, key.
That's all part of the exciting narrative, really, about Novo, because when you look at De Grey Mining and its successes, that went from, as you said, nothing to suddenly one of the big players, and they're still growing. And for them to take a stake in Novo Resources clearly means that they've seen something that is somewhat attractive to make them get involved and then open the checkbook and wanting to pursue that further with you. So, I mean, diving into what you've really uncovered and what you're hoping to really explore there, what's more insight into Becher?
So where Becher sits at the moment, we finished up our portion of exploration at end of June, and now De Grey are the managers going forwards. But up until the end of June, we'd completed 60,000 metres of air core. So if people aren't aware of air core, air core is a technique that's low cost, but it allows us to sample the surface cover, but also a little bit of the hard rock underneath the cover. And that little bit of hard rock is what we're looking for, because that tells us the host rock of the mineralisation. So in that 60,000 metres of air core drilling, we delineated almost a 20 square kilometre, huge block of land of gold anomalism. And when you compare those initial results to some of the early results that De Grey have published, you get very much the same style. Don't forget, De Grey, we're talking about a 1.5 gram per tonne system, but it's a big system. So we were seeing the same things. In air core results of 0.5s, 0.8s, even up to 2 grams per tonne. So the whole area was seeing the same characteristics that De Grey had, same intrusions, the same shear structures, the same geochemistry, all those good things that geologists like. De Grey have come in, had a look at that and go, gee, there's some similarities to what we see on our side of the fence. It'd be great if Becher turned into a resource, and then that would allow us to work with De Grey on maybe a production profile. So that's the optimism. Right?
Yeah.
Long way to go to achieve that, early days, but the fact that they have really identified the Becher Project early on is fantastic. So our challenge now is find something else.
Yes, of course. And I guess that's the excitement now, is that you've secured a bit more funding. It gives you a little bit more, as we said, freedom to allocate towards the other projects. And I know there's quite a few tenements that you guys have got. So what else is really evolving at Novo, and what I guess are the objectives over the next 6 to 12 months? And of course, the next question, which we'll touch on, is about the whole listing side of it.
So for us, for the next 6 months, quite a busy program. We're going to have probably 2 rigs at one stage drilling air core or diamond drill across Australia. So that's, I think, important. We've got enough cash flow to keep our exploration journeys going. So the first thing people will see is we'll start drilling at a project called Nunnery. So Nunnery is about 80 kilometres south of Becher. It's a very different style mineralisation. But our early work, again, using surface sampling and rock chips, we've seen results up to an ounce in our rock chips, right, over a 1.5 kilometre strike length at Nunnery. So we've now got heritage clearance. We're just building the access track. So we hope to drill Nunnery in September this year. So people should look out for that. And then we've also got a block of land north of Mallina, which we call Balla Balla. And it's really hosted around the Shoal Shear. So it's, again, early days. We hope to go drilling later this year. But what is Novo trying to do? We're trying to replicate the Mallina Basin story in Balla Balla. We see some great indications that maybe there is, opportunities for gold, and the Shoal Shear has been part of that conduit. So early days, no one's done modern exploration there and been able to put all the elements. So this is what we'll do as Novo, and that's what we like doing. We like building the pictures, and then hopefully that will lead to success. And we shouldn't forget, that's the Spreadborough, but we'll also go drilling way over in Victoria. We've got this small block of land, 22 square kilometres. Doesn't sound much compared to
the other project.
Yeah, but geology-wise, chalk and seas. We're talking about Victorian, Fosterville mine type geology, really, really complex. Geos have to delve into a lot of detail, geophysics, mapping, in this case, historical workings, and we hope to go drilling again around about October. So we've got a busy 6 months. Hopefully that will lead to success, but it continues that journey of us pulling apart our projects and then making a decision on whether we move forwards or we move on to other projects. We've got enough of a portfolio to keep us busy for 12 months.
And that leads into the whole listing on the ASX, because, knowing that it was on the TSX and will still be on there, and the OTC, again, listing in Australia, it is mining. It's sort of what it's known for, and almost in a way, when I think of the TSX, there are mining companies, but having an Australian potentially on there, and that might be because of its history, you sort of don't, it sort of disconnects with investors potentially. So the reason behind the ASX listing, I can see many would say is a no-brainer, being a gold explorer in the Pilbara with De Grey. It's sort of, the logical solution is the ASX, but I can imagine it's not as easy as just saying that. There's a lot of steps involved. So how was that whole process been unfolding, and what is the next steps in regards to ringing that bell?
For Novo, we've kind of been on the ASX journey for 12 months. We made the initial decision that we should explore that option. we always see the ASX as a better fit for Novo. Our assets in Australia. Australian investors like gold. They understand gold. I think we're sitting here today and the Australian gold price is at highs. So gold's still a great investment. So we see that the Australian investors appreciate the risks involved in exploration, but also the upside. They like gold and they like to invest in projects where they can see the management and directors, and we're here in Perth. So there's a great fit all the way there. We'll maintain our TSX and OTC listings. We've got some really great supportive shareholders, and that's important going forwards. But as we've kind of transitioned away from some of the old Novo strategies to our exploration strategies closer to home, we think the ASX is a better fit. And we are really looking to attract some of those institutional funds, which again struggle to invest overseas unless you're a big player or punching out dividends. And we're not into that space yet. So we think it is a natural fit. It's been a lot of work. We have 300 tenements. Trying to do the legal due diligence for those becomes tricky, but we've been able to achieve all of that. We lodged the prospectus last week, which is really good. And today the offer goes live. And so that'll be open from, today, the 10th of August through to the 1st of September. And the IPO will raise. So if all goes well, somewhere around mid-September, you'll see Novo trading on the ASX.
Exciting. And I can imagine that, again, as we said, that's the combination of 12 months of work, and then you could say the work just continues and if not increases. So, I mean, going through that process, of course, it's exciting that it's opening today, and the access to, as you say, sophisticated or institutional investors in Australia at gold is just like a partnership. It's just hand in hand. It's how we operate. But diving down over the next 6 to 12 months, you mentioned before, you've got quite a lot of drilling targets and operations to get underway, but I'm assuming that the funds are going to be used specifically in certain areas. So can you elaborate a bit more about where you're planning to exercise the funds raised and what investors can expect in the next coming 6 to 12 months?
So where we sit today, we've got about $26 million Australian. So for an explorer, we're quite well endowed with cash. We also have some unlisted investments, which in 2024 we hope to divest, but there's around about 20 million Australian in that. So during the IPO, we've said we want to raise between 4 and 7.5 million Australian. So it's not a big amount of money, but it allows us to start the liquidity journey on the ASX. Many of our existing shareholders, like De Grey, once we get on the ASX, they will, what they call transmute. They will move their holdings from the TSX to the ASX. So we'll start to build up a presence on the ASX. So that's the key aim for the next 6 to 12 months. Execute that exploration that we've talked about, do that drilling, and hopefully that will lead to success going forward. So we'll be post-IPO in a good position to do our exploration program for the next 12 months. Success will breed more success, but I think we're well positioned going forward. So it is an exciting time for our exploration team and all the people in the office that support them.
As you were saying before, because it's predominantly gold focused, I'd like to turn the conversation to just generally gold, the commodity, because as you alluded to, the price is at almost the highest it's been for Australian history, and the US, it's been bounding around that $2,000 odd an ounce, and it's sort of been accumulating there for the past while now. And I want to know really more so about the drivers for gold, because, we always hear it's a safe haven from an investment point of view, and there's really never a doubt that gold is a driver for investment. But we're sort of noticing this weird period, I guess, from a global standpoint, where it might be more of the economic side of it, but you've got global banks, economic banks buying money and storing it, or buying gold rather. But I just want to know what you think the outlook is shaping up for gold, because that, of course, feeds down into the junior explorer side of it. And as we were saying, Diggers and Dealers is now all about lithium, whereas traditionally it was all about gold. But gold hasn't really disappeared. It's just hasn't got that shiny attraction that lithium has got. So what are your thoughts on gold going forward?
Yeah, I think it's hard to be an expert for gold this year.
Yeah.
I think, from January across the world, our shareholders and other people that help us out have always, said to me, gold's going to break out sometime. Well, here we are in August, and we kind of really haven't seen a breakout. And we've consistently seen a disconnect. Aussie dollar, we're a very good gold price, but we haven't necessarily seen that flow into markets. We've seen, not great interest rates coming out of the United States, but that didn't flow into uplifting gold price. So I think people are still struggling with what they do that. And I listened to, Jake Klein from Evolution at Diggers, and he was lamenting the same thing. His first slide was a gold price, which is absolutely superb. So why not invest in gold? So I think Jake is correct. Gold is something you should always have in your portfolio. It is a safe haven. Gold producers and gold explorers offer lots of upside. I think one of Jake's slide really talked about that if you look at the ASX market, there's more liquidity in gold stocks than there are in some of the critical minerals. So there's more of an upside and benefit to shareholders. So I would always argue, have a bit of gold in your portfolio. It's really important. Sure, lithium and other things are seeing great growth at the moment, but they are high risk at the moment given the markets and the transparency. So gold, I think, will continue to have a good future in our economy. I think gold prices will remain high. And as we all know, we're really lacking gold discoveries. And so that's another great upside for people to invest in gold explorers, because we're due some really big discoveries beyond what we've seen with De Grey. So that's the attraction.
Yeah, well, given, because that exploration across the board, but yet gold is no exception. There's been an underwhelming lack of investment or development of new mines, and it's this natural cycle whereby there's been major discoveries, but there hasn't been enough really given the demand increases, and that's across the board. But that flows into you need the exploration, which if I tie it back to De Grey Mining, the fact that they're wanting to get involved, they see the potential in it, is clearly there's no shortage of tenements and areas and projects, but clearly they've navigated and decided to go with you guys, which has been, again, it's an incredible story and it's going to continue to develop. So if I'm tying back to that, the whole discussions with De Grey Mining and getting them interested, you said it was because they noticed similarities. That was clearly a process that's evolved and developed, I can imagine, over an extended period of time. But how did that really just start? And was it a one approach the other without disclosing, maybe not meant to, but how did those conversations really originate?
Yeah, it was a combination of strategies. We clearly early on, when we looked at priorities within the Pilbara and what the exploration team were working on, we saw Becher as a great opportunity. That really linked into our journey on the ASX, and as part of that journey, we were looking for a partner, Cornerstone, to help us support that ASX listing. And De Grey was one of a few groups across Australia and the world that we talked to. But at the end of the day, the De Grey team knew more about the project. They bring a lot of benefits for our shareholders in knowing more about the ground and being able to accelerate discovery. So that's, at the end of the day, we saw their working with us as the best attraction. But we definitely had interest from many other parties in our exploration and what our team do. So that's really good for us. And, Novo, as a clear strategy, we don't stand up and say that we want to be a developer. We've seen enough explorers fall over being a developer. Each of our projects, like Nunnery, that we'll start drilling, if that turns out to be a great opportunity, we'll make an independent assessment on what's the best pathway for shareholders. I don't think explorers should always get out of bed and go, I want to be a developer. Does that really bring money to shareholders? When, as you've seen with Becher, $10 million of investment to De Grey, so that cash is now going to be used at Nunnery and Balla Balla and elsewhere. But then at Becher, someone else is spending the money, De Grey's money, on pushing Becher, and we've still going to keep 50%. So $25 million on that Becher project and the other tenements around it is a pretty good lick of money
100%.
Going forward. So that means we can put our efforts looking at the next big thing.
And it's well funded as well, which means that you haven't got that consistent headache of having to again, go back and try and get more money, knowing that you've got something. But as we said, capital is a constraint, which Novo hasn't necessarily got those limitations now with De Grey coming in. And given that it's that area, we could say De Grey has a lot more resources. But if we're outlining, because I think the Pilbara is the real, the excitement at least that I've got. What sort of areas it like if you're describing it? Because on a podcast, it's hard to sort of visualize it. But describing that area, and you said like accessibility, and just what is the lay of the land out there? Yeah.
So if people can really think, the De Grey ground and our ground, it sits, between Karratha and Port Hedland. It's about almost equal distance. It's quite flat, but it always has those solid ridges or mountain. I can't call them mountains, I suppose, but ridges or hills throughout the Pilbara. As we all know, in summer it becomes very hot, so we normally don't drill during the cyclone season because it's just access is too hard. So it's quite scrubby material. As people know, there's dry riverbanks in there, but during the wet season they run with very high rains as we have with the cyclone season. I actually think it's quite attractive. I've spent a lot of my life, even though I'm in Queensland, in and out of the Pilbara, and I think the Pilbara's quite nice. So, I think there's the communities there, Karratha, Roebourne, Port Hedland, are very supportive communities of that. We're fortunate, and part of the reason it's great to work with De Grey is we both share kind of the same ethos and the same desire to work with the traditional owners in the area. So that's been important to us in choosing a partner as well. Yeah,
well, that was going to feed into my next question, really, was about the interaction now with traditional owners has been clearly a direction and a paramount for mining explorers. So elaborating on a bit more of that, it's good to know, and those communities are paramount to have involved in the discussions, but how is that all evolving? And given it's not just that, it's also the community, the towns, it's a very mining friendly sort of jurisdiction, which is also helpful, but what are the conversations like surrounding that?
Well, Novo's a bit interesting because of it, the size of our portfolio. We actually work with 9 traditional owners across the country, 8 of them here in Western Australia in the Pilbara. We like to build grassroots relationships to the point where, whilst we have a really strong heritage team that can talk to other people, but I like to be able to know the CEOs and the boards of the traditional owners, and so does our General Manager Exploration, Kaz DeLuca. We think that personal touch is important. As I said, I've been in and out of the Pilbara for a long time, so I actually know those traditional owners for a whole range of different reasons. But you've got to have respect for their culture, and that's number one. Like any friendship or relationship, you have to build it from trust, and Novo's very good at doing that. If we promise to look after cultural heritage, we do so. We're very supportive of the heritage survey work that has to be done, and we're very happy to help the traditional owners as they grow their businesses and how we incorporated that. I think across the Pilbara, the groups that we deal with, they're very sophisticated. They're very willing to work with mining companies who show the right integrity, and that's important.
Yeah, well, and that's a key which you alluded to as well about the team and having that trust. So if you want to shed a bit more light on who's involved in Novo Resources from top to bottom, I mean, what makes it an attractive team, and clearly having this success is a proof of concept of who's involved. So who was a part of the team?
For a small company, we've got quite a really experienced exploration team. So Kaz DeLuca is our General Manager Exploration. Kaz has worked across the world chasing gold projects and has been very, very successful. She's supported by 3 exploration managers who carry the same type of ethos, but also the same experience looking for gold across the world, and that's really important. That whole team, as I said, not only do they have great respect for the traditional owners, but they are very disciplined in their approach and how they work with the exploration team. We rely on everyone from fieldies all the way up to tenement management people to make us happen, and we've got a great team that works to that. They're very focused on technology and the latest expertise, which is important, and really that's driven our success. And that team can't be as successful if there isn't support from people like myself and the board of Novo. And on the board of Novo, we've got experienced geologists and people that have been in the mine industry, and we also have a director who's focused purely on sustainability and ESG. So we bring the right skill set as a whole team in Novo to be successful.
Yeah, it's a round out picture of why it's gotten to where it is, and as we said, there's a lot more to go. So if we're understanding how people can reach out and going through this raising bit now, I mean, can we get a bit more information about the IPO process, and potentially if people do want to get involved, how they can?
Yeah, quite easy. So first thing is click on the website. There'll be a box there with the prospectus and apologies. You'll see a video of me talking about the IPO, and there's also some other videos of both me and Kaz DeLuca talking about our exploration. So that is without doubt a wealth of knowledge, and you'll also find some forms there that allows you to participate on the IPO. So Argonaut are our brokers with the mandate for this, so you can also reach out to Argonaut who help you along the way.
Beautiful. Yeah, well, I'm excited to read it. I haven't had a chance, given that, as we're recording August 10th.
I do warn you, the prospectus is like 30 pages. But if you get through, the first 10 or 15 pages outlines Novo's strategy and the assets that we have. And there's also a good, overview presentation. As I said, a couple of videos, the last exploration update video and the IPO video. And there's also a wonderful Novo corporate video about the Pilbara. So there's some great pictures of the Pilbara and geologists flying around in helicopters. So
fantastic.
It's a good introduction to Novo.
Yeah. No, I'm excited, and that's where I've sort of was excited to have this conversation with you to learn about it, because it's a company that's been there for a long time, but now bringing it back to home onto the ASX shore, you could say is going to captivate a lot of people's interest, given all the parts and the parts of the puzzle that are all lining up, and it's going to be a very exciting period of time. So thank you for joining me on the show today, and I look forward to hearing how it evolves and seeing it ring the bell in the coming month and seeing what happens. So thank you again, Mike.
Thanks very much, Ben.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow the Market Bull on our socials at Twitter and LinkedIn by searching The Market Bull. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website by visiting www.themarketbull.com.au.